Welcome! My name is Fabian Lenz and I'm going to talk about the conceptual design phase where we are going to evaluate existing business practices against established use cases. Over the decades of end-user computing, a lot of organizations have established their own characteristics, their own practices around end-user computing. They have created policies, they have created processes that are not really aligned to a modern approach of managing desktops and managing applications. So those old processes, they don't really fit to modern ideas of virtual desktop infrastructures or any kind of other mobile device management characteristics. For example, one current business practice is that due to any kind of legacy application requirement, like mission-critical applications that require an old Internet Explorer, we cannot really move our users to a modern operating system platform. So that is a common business practice, and what we need to do is to figure out those business practices and see how we can use a new approach like application virtualization to virtualize those Internet Explorer application and virtualize Internet Explorer and transfer it to a modern operating system, give the users a modern operating system with this virtualized Internet Explorer so that old legacy application can be run on modern platforms. How can we establish that? With, for example, VMware FinApp. Another common business practice is that, over the years we have, for security compliance regulation, created complex logon scripts within Windows that run during the first logon, during a logon of a user in an operating system of the Microsoft world, and run those complex scripts. That's something that are not really good usable, not really manageable. So we have created new user environment focused solutions like the VMware User Environment Manager that helps us to create condition-based configurations within the user's environment. Is a user logging in and coming over an internet connection, different performance policies are applied to the remote protocol, different security policies applied to this user session. So those are things that can be created easily without the need for complex, self-created, not maintainable scripts in our environment. Other things or other examples of current business practices are that we deliver our application and package applications with SCCM, with a legacy software distribution methods. So if we have virtual desktops and we want to put an application into all of our 100, 200 virtual desktops, we might end up in a situation that we publish those applications one-to-one from the server to the virtual desktop, and that multiplied by 200. Another existing business practice that we observe very often is that we use, let's say, a software distribution construct that has been built in a world where every user had one physical device. So the application that was distributed was sent from a server to the client in a centralized but one-to-one fashion. That's not really efficient. If we have 200 virtual desktops that are in the data center, it might not make sense to have this legacy approach configured for that. What we can use is, for example, using instant clones within Horizon and add applications where an application delivery method of app volumes into those virtual desktops. That is much faster, much more centralized, and gives us much more options for certain use cases for sure. So it might be for certain use cases we still need the old method of delivering application, but for other use cases we can benefit from certain modern application delivery methods. Or we want to allow the users to use not just corporate-owned devices, but also personally privately owned devices, and that's where we can use modern client management mechanism that can be used via Workspace ONE, AirWatch, Identity Manager to give people access to certain application under certain conditions. That's a very, very important thing that we can do nowadays with this modern client management. When we talk about end-user computing solution, end-user computing practices, we need to figure out the use cases. I told you in the beginning that the end user is always in the middle of all our design decisions that we made, design characteristics. And for sure, we need to make sure that we understand the use case and categorize the certain people within our organization into a standardized use case. For example, we have the static task worker. The static task worker is someone who needs access to Office application, needs probably access to a browser, internet-based environment. He uses probably SaaS application. The application runs in the data center. The user is probably in a remote office, probably on campus of the company. So we need to figure out what location characteristic is behind those static task workers. They don't have really high hardware requirements. They have either lower hardware requirements, and we might be able to satisfy their needs with modern application delivery mechanisms. What else do we got? Maybe we have a mobile knowledge worker. This is something, for example, a doctor in the hospital that walks around, uses mobile devices, uses at the same time stationary PCs, terminal servers to access data, to access certain applications and from different devices. That's something where we probably have higher requirements for the remote protocol display quality, where we have more requirements for a stable network characteristic in the customer's environment. What else do we got? Probably something like a multimedia designer or engineer who requires 3D accelerated graphics cards, who needs GPU power, who needs a certain high amount of compute power, CPU and memory, who needs a persistent virtual desktop that has a lot of disk space to do all of this creativity work he does in the environment. Or we have something like a contractor. That is someone who only has a specific access to specific application only in certain scenarios if he had used a certain second factor authentication. So those are only a few of typical use cases and typical use cases we see today in today's organization. And we need to understand them, we need to analyze them, we need to apply the things we've learned to characterize those use cases. So how does the Horizon Suite, how does VMware's end-user computing solutions help us to create a great VDI, a great end-user computing design in the end? So important best practices always rely on the underlying use case. So there is no general best practice. There's just the best practice for a certain requirement. And for sure, Horizon and the Workspace ONE suite allows us to create a great solution around the end user to fulfill all of the requirements that are identified within the conceptual design. For example, Horizon helps us to give the end user access to a virtual desktop, to a virtual application within the data center. So the data and the compute, our virtual machine, is as close as possible beneath each other, which increases the security, increases the performance. And since we are now decoupled from the end user location to the application itself, we have much more flexibility here with the Horizon Suite. With VMware App Volumes, we are able to deliver applications in a very fast way to our desktops. If we have so-called app stacks, we can add in real time new applications into the virtual desktops by just mounting this app stack to the virtual machine. Or we can allow a user to install application on his own behalf by putting those applications into so-called writable volume. What else do we got? User Environment Manager. With the Use Environment Manager, we are able to persist the user data in an easy way, to apply certain user environment settings based on conditions like Active Directory group membership, or client IP address, or by a certain access method like internet access or internal access. VMware vRealize operations for Horizon helps us to capture all the information regarding performance, capacity, and the connection to quickly identify gaps within the resources like network, like CPU, like memory, and figure out how to easily improve the end-user experience in the end. VMware vSphere, for sure, the underlying platform that gives us the base foundation for our virtual machines. The same counts for vSAN as a storage platform for our virtual machines, and NSX for any kind of security characteristics, micro-segmentation, endpoint security, antivirus integration with third-party vendors. So the Horizon and Workspace ONE suite really gives us a good choice on components that we use or that we can use to build a solid end-user computing platform.